11 years have passed, but the word Sewol still cuts deep into the hearts of South Koreans. Today, we're not just revisiting the tragic sinking of the Sewol Ferry, we're confronting a chilling question that refuses to go away. Was this disaster that claimed hundreds of lives merely an accident? Or was it something darker, a sacrifice masked as tragedy? Let's rewind to April 16th, 2014. A white passenger ferry named Sewol set sail for Jeju Island, carrying 476 people. Among them were 325 students from Danwon High School in Ansan, full of excitement for their graduation trip. The night before, thick fog had shut down nearly all sea traffic. Most vessels remained docked, but at 8:35 p.m, the fog warning was lifted. And by around 9 p.m, only one ship defied the odds and left Incheon port, the Sewol. The next morning, a loud bang shattered the calm. The Sewol's hull lost control. Its systems completely failed. Within just 4 minutes, the ship began to list. On board, announcements echoed again and again. "Stay where you are. Wait for instructions." Terrified, hundreds of students and passengers obeyed. Trapped below deck, they remained inside, as the ship slowly sank around them. Ironically, while the loudspeaker repeatedly told passengers to stay put, Captain Lee Jun-seok and his senior crew made a very different choice. They abandoned ship, escaping before anyone else. A high school student was the first to call emergency services. A Coast Guard patrol boat soon arrived at the scene. But for over an hour, they didn't even attempt to enter the sinking ferry. Instead, local fishermen, acting on their own, rescued most of the survivors. As for the so-called golden 72 hours of rescue time, there was no real rescue effort. Military teams waited on standby, doing nothing. In the end, 304 lives were lost. 5 people remain missing to this day. While hundreds of lives were struggling and slipping away beneath the sea, where was the nation's top commander, President Park Geun-hye? The answer is chilling. The official accident report had reached her by 10:20 a.m. But for the next 7 crucial hours, she mysteriously vanished. It wasn't until the 2016 Choi Soon-sil political scandal erupted that the truth began to unravel. At the time of the disaster, Park Geun-hye was reportedly in a private meeting with her confidant Choi Soon-sil and others. She even spent hours having her hair styled and didn't appear at the Disaster Response Centre until 4 p.m. Park's cold, distant response fueled a storm of rumours and conspiracy theories, and among them, the most chilling and widespread, was this: the Sewol victims were part of a human sacrifice. This theory ties directly to Park Geun-hye and her so-called spiritual mentor, Choi Tae-min, and his family, a name long whispered in South Korea's darkest political corners. Park Geun-hye was South Korea's first female president and the eldest daughter of former President Park Chung-hee. She was also the only president since South Korea's democratization in 1987 to win more than half the vote in a presidential election. But just 3 years into her term, Park was impeached by the National Assembly due to the Choi Soon-sil scandal, making her the first president in South Korean history to be removed from office by impeachment. Choi Soon-sil's influence over Park began entirely because of her father, Choi Tae-min. After Park Geun-hye's mother was assassinated in 1974, Choi Tae-min, founder of the cult Yongsaegyo, approached the young Park. He became her spiritual mentor after she lost both parents. Their relationship was extremely close. Choi Tae-min even told others that he and Park were spiritual spouses. Under her father's influence, Choi Soon-sil became Park's close confidant starting in 1977. From that point on, the shadow of the Choi family loomed over Park Geun-hye's entire political career. The connection to human sacrifice traces back directly to Choi Tae-min. The day the Sewol Ferry sank, April 16, 2014, coincidentally marked the 20th anniversary of Choi Tae-min's death, according to the lunar calendar. This sparked a terrifying suspicion. Was this tragic disaster, which claimed the lives of hundreds of students, actually a carefully planned sea sacrifice? A ritual intended to bring about a resurrection ceremony on Choi Tae-min's 20th death anniversary? And could Park Geun-hye's mysterious disappearance during those critical hours be linked to this dark ritual? This suspicion isn't completely unfounded. A major South Korean newspaper once reported that Choi Soon-sil edited as many as 44 of Park Geun-hye's speeches. In a public speech about the Sewol Ferry disaster, Park used chilling and puzzling phrases like, "Remember the noble sacrifice of the children, and we must understand that the children's sacrifice created the opportunity for the rebirth of the Republic of Korea." Adding to the mystery, the owner of the Sewol Ferry, Yoo Byung-yeon, chairman of Chonghaejin Marine Company, was also the leader of South Korea's notorious cult called the Salvation Sect. He was involved in the infamous 1987 mass suicide of the Five Oceans cult and was convicted for his role. Yoo and his sect also had close ties with the Eternal Life Church. The students were originally scheduled to take another ferry, but just one day before departure, they were suddenly switched to the Sewol, owned by Yoo Byung-yeon. On the day of the disaster, weather conditions at Incheon port were severe. At least 10 other ships cancelled their voyages, yet the Sewol insisted on setting sail. Even more suspicious, about 90% of the crew members and the last-minute replacement captain Lee Jun-seok, who famously abandoned ship, were followers of the Salvation Sect cult. These shocking coincidences fueled widespread rumours of a cult sea sacrifice, highlighting the deep mistrust many Koreans have toward the official explanations. Following the cult sacrifice theory, some have dug up an old case from February 21st, 1974. Another passenger ferry carrying many new soldiers sank in the same waters, causing numerous deaths. Just like the Sewol disaster, the government's rescue efforts were inadequate. At that time, the president was none other than Park Geun-hye's father, Park Chung-hee. What's even more eerie is that during the Hansung incident, Park Chung-hee also mysteriously disappeared for several hours. It seems the shadows of history are repeating themselves. However strange the cult conspiracy theories may be, they remain just speculation. The real, deadly core of the Sewol disaster was the Park Geun-hye government's negligence, chaos, and incompetence. After the accident, investigators found bundles of heavy construction rebar buried in the Sewol's cargo hold sludge. Each bundle was about 12 metres long and contained 50 bars. While the Sewol's maximum cargo capacity was only 987 tonnes, at departure it was carrying 2,215 tonnes, overloaded by a staggering 1,228 tonnes. A senior ship owner interviewed by South Korea's leading newspaper revealed a disturbing industry secret. To profit from overloading, some manipulate the ship's ballast water at Incheon port to pass inspections through deception. This nearly open secret in the shipping industry was long ignored by regulatory authorities. If the regulatory negligence and fatal mistakes by the crew before the disaster were the tragic starting point, then the government's actions afterward were like pouring salt into the wounds of the victims' families. Only after Park Geun-hye's downfall was the truth revealed. South Korea's top military intelligence agency, the Defense Security Command, had been conducting large-scale, systematic surveillance on the grieving families of the victims. The documents recorded everything in chilling detail: which parent was waiting where, hoping for news of their missing child, what political views they held, even down to their date of birth, educational background, what online communities they joined and what items they bought online, every meeting, every activity planned by the family's self-organised countermeasure committee. It was all monitored, categorised and reported. The surveillance extended even into Danwon High School, where the children had studied before the tragedy. Agents from the Defense Security Command infiltrated the school, reporting on its internal affairs in real time. Even more despicably, they sent people to pose as grieving family members, infiltrating support groups to gather information. All of these dirty tactics served a single purpose: to control public opinion and prevent the fury over the ferry disaster from shaking the foundations of Park Geun-hye's administration. The sinking of the Sewol Ferry was not a natural disaster. It was a man-made catastrophe, one that should never have happened. Most of those responsible have since faced judgment. Yoo Byung-yun, chairman of Chonghaejin Marine, chose to end his life. 178 others were detained and prosecuted, 11 indicted without detention, and ultimately 53 people were convicted. But justice has its limits. No sentence, no matter how harsh, can bring back those young lives, nor can it heal the deep wounds and the crisis of trust that this tragedy left on an entire nation. May the victims rest in peace, and may such a tragedy never happen again. What do you believe? Was the Sewol Ferry tragedy a human sacrifice, or just a man-made disaster? Leave your comments below.